Today's episode is brought to you by Viralcast, the first and only completely done-for-you podcast production service. Build new relationships, create a deeper connection with your database, and get exposure to new audiences. Here's how it works. You interview influencers in your market. You start building that new relationship. Then you take that valuable content and share it with your database. Your guest then shares the content with their list. Everybody wins. You get new relationships, you create a deeper connection with your list, and get exposure to new people that you would never have access to. And look, if you're currently mining your database with video, stop. Audio is the new reality. We are living in an influence economy. Exposure is the new social capital. Go to Viralcast with a K to learn more. And right now, for the first 25 subscribers, we're offering a 50% off the getting started price. Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first million in real estate. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the show, you know what we do here? We deconstruct what top producers are doing in the market from a mindset, from a strategy, tactic perspective. Today's episode, pretty interesting story. This guy is a husband and wife team selling real estate, and he was a day laborer. Okay, this guy worked on construction sites. He's a day laborer. Realized he's like, why am I breaking my back swinging a hammer when he had a situation where he bought a house, and he's like, dude, this agent just opened up a door and he made 10 grand, right? So he's like, I'm dropping the hammer, man. I'm dropping the nail bags. I want to be a businessman. So anyhow, started selling real estate, and just in terms of like how successful this guy's been. 1.9 million in GCI. This guy's got hustle. We talk about all that. We talk about, what he did when he first started. And I'll tell you, it's not magical. It's just doing it. It's having hustle. And I think that's I can teach you guys, I can illustrate to you guys everything on how to build a business. It's all here. But the one thing I can't teach you hustle. And it's funny, if for those of us who have kids, and most people's kids play some kind of sport, go out and watch these kids, right? Third graders, fourth graders, and you will just naturally see some kids have that hustle, and other kids, they're like, I'll wait till the ball gets to me. So we talk about all that. We talk about how to build a super profitable business. Because you know what? I don't care if you're doing 300 deals, 500 deals. That doesn't matter if your bottom line isn't working for you. So that's it. It's Friday. So look, join me on Twitter. Join the conversation. My Twitter handle is @SuperAgentsLive. Hashtag for the show is Unpack That Idea. Go to the website. Download my free ebook, get on my list. I share stuff on my list that I don't share with anybody else or anywhere else. SuperAgentsLive.com. If you're so inclined, give us a rating or review. The show's been doing really well on iTunes, and I'd like to keep it up. That's it. Other than that, man, you guys want to start a podcast? You want to build new relationships? You want to mine your database? Viralcast. Go check it out. Viralcast with a K. All right. Hey, let's get to it. Today on the show, I'm excited about today's guest. Now, you often hear me saying that, but today's guest, I'm truly excited about. I think he's going to drop the goods here. Now, look, here's the deal. Here's this guy. He's in Rancho Cucamonga, which is Southern Cal, just outside of L.A. It's a husband and wife team. Now, just a husband and wife team. He has 4 admin, right? Transaction coordinator, though, you know the scoop. 1 full-time buyer's agent, 2 part-time. Now with that very, very, very small team. Here's what he's been able to accomplish. Now, if I go back to 2013, he did 389 deals for about $100 million. Now, this year, or 2014, he did a little less, 247 for $67 million in volume. Average sale, 270. Now, here's what you're going to want to hear. With, again, that husband and wife team, 4 admins, he did 1.9 million GCI in 2014, 2.9 in 2013. I'm thrilled to welcome Ricardo Acevedo. Hey, Ricardo, thanks for taking the time, man.
No problem. Thank you for having me over. Good morning, guys.
All right. So listen, I want to get into what you're doing. I want to get into how you're doing it so profitably. But before we get to that, I'm always curious about who you are, man. You know, the man behind the machine. So take a minute, tell us a little bit about who Ricardo is.
Ricardo's a businessman. Obviously, it's a guy who's very dedicated to the business. Been in the business a little bit under 10 years, and I got into the market when the market was getting ready to collapse. So I've learned the business. What everybody says on the hardest time, but to be honest with you, it's been obviously a blessing for me to get into the business at the time we did, because I didn't learn the business other than just the way you got to run business, what the basic fundamentals of real estate. As far as that goes, I've been in business almost 10 years. I've started just between me and my wife, and then obviously expanded ourselves depending on, the growth of the company to, hiring staff members and a couple of buyer's agents to be able to, delegate and start growing, the company as we had planned, based on the growth. Personal, I come from a big family. I've got 8 kids.
Oh my
7
God.
boys, 1 girl, and I'm a very busy parent, a very busy dad also with our children and their personal activities as well.
Okay. Well, first of all, your wife is completely outnumbered over there. Okay. What did you do? 10 years ago, 06, you got in at. I'm in San Diego, so we're not too far off. Here in Southern California, 06 was a good year. 07 started to see the decline. 08 was a disaster. So I want to talk about how you shifted and shimmied. But before we get there, man, what did you do before that? What did you do before you got into real estate?
Nothing related to real estate. I used to be in the construction field, hard labor work.
So you were a guy out there swinging a hammer. And you said enough of this, 110 degree, weather. You just started that. So you had no business background, you had no sales background, and yet you came out of the gate swinging.
That is very true. The way it started, it was, we got into the business because we've experienced the transaction of our first purchase.
Okay.
My wife and I. We're engaged at the age of 20. We got married at 21, but, in the process of our engagement, we bought our first home. We got involved in the real estate, transaction, and we actually realized that it was something that we were interested on learning and getting into the business. I had a family member at that time that was in the business. Didn't have much of a close relationship with that family member, but I remember she was doing pretty well at that time economically. So, we got involved in our first real estate transaction, purchasing our own first home, and we decided to get my wife licensed, get her into the business, and that's how it all started.
So let me play this out a little bit, right? So you're out there in Rancho Cucamonga. It's hot. You're swinging a hammer, you're in at 6 a.m., and you're getting your maybe you're making $20, $25 an hour. So you're saving for your down payment. You go through this purchase, you realize, holy crap, all this person did was open up a door and, they just made 10 grand. I gotta give this a go.
Something similar to that, yes. Something like that.
All right. Okay. So again, no business background. You do have, because I think a lot of people, and the only reason I'm keying in on this stuff a little bit, Ricardo, is because I think a lot of people listening have your kind of a story, meaning that, they're starting off. They have a family that they need to. In this case, you had a wife, or your soon-to-be wife, You have people relying on that. You got to feed, man. So tell me about what did you do? You get licensed. Now you got your wife licensed. What was that about? You wanted to see if she could do it before you jumped in, or?
Yeah, well, basically, we were both employed. She was on the medical field. Obviously, I was on the construction field. Obviously, now we had a responsibility of a mortgage. We had three kids at the time. Obviously, had the typical car payment and just, the responsibilities of every marriage or family out there that, you normally carry. So what we did is the way we started is we got our wife licensed. She got licensed. She got into the business, to kind of test out the waters and see how things obviously develop. She was doing all right, struggling like everyone else, in the business, learning as she was going. We were pretty blessed to be around, good people, good people that was doing business correctly, doing, good business, not at the level, obviously, that nowadays we would have wished that we would obviously teamed up with, but, it was good people that we learned a lot from, and she got licensed, started doing, her thing. She left the medical field to start doing this full time. And, obviously I needed to continue to do my job because that was going the income that was going to supply, the income that we needed to generate and cover our cost of living so that her income wasn't going to be affecting, obviously, our overall overhead cost at home. So she left the industry on her side and ended up going into real estate full-time as obviously a full-time agent, and I kept my construction job so that I could.
No, sure. Yeah, and sorry, not to cut you off, but because I want to get to the meat here. No, I get it, right? So you had to keep working because you were the gas, right? You were providing the fuel for her to go out and do it. What I'm curious about is, not knowing the business. Like when I say where did you start, like tell me what exactly either her or you did, like the first thing, like what is and I guess this is for somebody that finds themselves in this position right now. They're just starting out. They have their license. And they're like, what do I do? So what did you do?
Well, what we were taught, going out, meeting people, door knocking, open houses, hitting our sphere of influence, everyone and anyone we knew, family members, friends. But mostly, and I think what was very, productive for us, we were out there doing what we were supposed to be doing is, it's basically door knocking, handing out flyers, just meeting people to generate contacts, turn them into leads, and eventually, close a transaction based off of the contacts.
Okay, so you were door knocking. Now, again, I think a lot of people, I think it's a brilliant, it doesn't cost anything, it's all about hustle. A lot of people just aren't comfortable doing that, or at the end of the day don't have the hustle to do it. How did you, in terms of choosing a farm? So if you're going to door knock, you have to have a farm, right? You have to be deliberate about it. What are some of the steps that you went through to say, okay, this neighborhood or this area should be our farm? Or did you have a plan?
Well, yes, I did. At the time when I started doing my door knocking, I was a type of guy, when I got into the business, doing it as a part-time, just assisting my wife part-time, we definitely did choose a farm area, like you just mentioned, and I personally, told myself, okay, this is the area I'm going to focus on. I'm going to continue to work it hard because eventually I want to dominate this area. I want to become the number one guy here to go to, and that did indeed happen. I started focusing just a specific farm. I kept door knocking on a daily basis, just worked it for a long time until eventually I started seeing signs popping up with my name there, and that started driving, more listings and more listings until I got to the point where I had already dominated the area, and I was the guy that was basically making it happen in that community.
So, in terms of, look, when it comes to door knocking, right, the hardest door that to deal with is your car door, right, or your front door, right? Once you get out of your car door, you're okay. What was the thing that you said? Knock, knock, knock. I open my door to you. Again, you're a guy that hasn't. I'm taking you back to the beginning. You're a guy that hasn't done a transaction yet. You know in theory what to do, but I answer my door and go hello. Like what was the script there?
Well, I went back to just the very basics. I asked a couple of the guys that was around, me in the office, and I would ask them what kind of script would I use. They were never the Mike Ferry or the Tom Ferries or the Tom Hopkins type of guys. They were not doing any coaching or anything like that. So, I obviously screwed up a lot of good context because of not being educated enough to know what to say. But, I would just use a very basic, as, I'm here knocking because I've got a listing or I'm looking for someone to buy or sell, and just, information about, the community itself, until I started getting more educated, start basically, getting myself more educated with information about, the appropriate, verbiage to use, the outline to use, and that took time. It was a learning experience, but I know I blew up a lot of good leads or got a lot of good contacts at the beginning because I wasn't, well trained or educated to know exactly what to say, and that's how I believe we all start.
Sure. I mean, we've all heard the thing, fail forward. And I think just for the audience, I think what I'm taking away from this, Ricardo, is that, look, it's okay to go out and say, hey, I'm knocking in this area because I'm looking for some business. I want to help somebody, buy or sell. So I think that's okay. How long, with this very, very direct approach, how long did it take you before you got your first deal, whether that's a buy or sell?
You know what? It happened very quick for me. It happened very quick. I was one of those guys. I started doing it part-time, and within my first 6 months part-time assisting my wife, I think we closed a little bit over 30 deals. So we actually did really, really well the first year, part-timers. It was just one of those things, man. It was something that was for me. I noticed I enjoyed it so much. I put a lot of passion, dedication, very enthusiastic. Just the right mindset about it. And let me tell you this, our business started, going and taking off pretty quickly, even though the market was challenging at the time we got in. It was not the greatest market based on everybody else around us and the feedback we used to get from people.
Right.
Even the same realtor that sold me my first home ran across me and my wife in the middle of a lending office, after, a few months or a year before, after we got the house from him, and he asked us, hey, what are you doing here? So we told him, we got license and we're in the business. His response was, oh, man, you came into the business at the worst time. I recommend you stop what you're doing and you go back to your job. And all I did is I just listened to the man because he was an older man, and I said, no, that's not me. I had a mindset. My mentality was, this is not going to happen to me. I have something I have to accomplish here. I have the drive. I have the wants, the desire, and the rest is obviously it's history.
Sure. And look, and here's the thing, Ricardo, is if you would have went back to your construction job, chances are you would have been out of a job. Like in the next 12 months. Because
based on the economy and everything that happened, that's very, very true.
And I think there's something to be said for you not knowing any better, right? You got into this market that's the market that you know, and so you didn't necessarily enjoy that. While there's a lot of guys and girls who thought they were rock stars, from 01 to 06, and realized in 07 that they weren't. Okay, so you started knocking. It happened very fast for you. Now, you and don't be offended about if I say something but you not being a business guy and you maybe a little bit having a scarcity mindset. Did it take you a while, or was it difficult for you to realize, hey, I have to invest in my business and start doing typical marketing?
Yes, I did realize that after I started. I think that's one of the first things I started doing. I was never afraid, to put money back into my business. And that's actually one of the first things I started doing is that once we started cashing in, I'm going to say not the first checks. I'm going to say probably after the 15th or 20th check I cashed in, having some reserves already and having some money aside. That's the first thing we started doing is basically investing right back into marketing pieces, whatever that was at that time, postcards or flyers, so that we can reinvest a portion of that income right back into the business. Because for me personally, in our area, there was a couple of guys that were doing really, really good, heavy hitters. So my mentality was, they were my role models. Those guys were people like, okay, one day I'm going to be just like those guys, if not better. And those guys used to really, pounded hard on the marketing side of it. So that's the first investment I started doing right into my business. It's the marketing pieces.
Yeah. Well, okay. So okay, I want to get there, but I want to something you've said over and over again in this interview so far is, you said, "Oh, great people, like good people around me." Talk to us about the importance of surrounding yourself with good folks.
Well, like-mind minds it's one of those things, you always hear from, the top producing people or from, those motivational speaker guys out there, is whoever you surround yourself with, that's the person you're most likely going to end up becoming. So, my whole thing was just surrounding myself with successful people and just basically trying to imitate what they were doing so that I could eventually become just like them or better than what they were doing.
Now, did you ever grab any one of those people as a mentor?
No, not necessarily.
Interesting.
I would approach, I would ask questions, and I was a very hands-on type of guy. I learned from my mistakes. I learned from going out and applying what I'm listening or what I was told to do, and that's what it came down to. Obviously, within couple of years after, I started doing some personal coaching, going to seminars, starting getting myself educated personally as far as becoming a better salesperson, how to utilize, obviously, scripts, what to say, what not to say, and basically started now investing into myself. Not into marketing, which that continued to happen, but now starting to invest into myself to become a better salesperson, to become a better me.
Okay. So what was if you can remember, when did you have sort of an aha moment of like, oh, wow, like this is the thing that if I change, it's going to change everything in my business?
You know what? I think when I started understanding about creating different type of, I want to say, systems into my business, understanding of not just going out and finding customers, understanding the point that it was not just a temporary thing, because at the beginning I got in and I started doing good, but I never saw myself, I still kept on thinking, how long would I be able to do okay? How long could I stay in this business? Because I was living just by the moment and not really thinking that it was an actual company company that I was creating and that I was building. When I realized that it was actually a company and it was something that it was going to be for the long term, that's when I started realizing, okay, we got to start building this differently, Ricardo. You got to put a good system in place. You got to start delegating. You got to hire. You got to do this. You got to do that. Because if you really want to run this as a business, then you have to change everything that you're doing, because production was there. We were making money. That was never the problem. Some other people, that's the problem they have, is it's them getting to a level of producing. For me, I think the producing part of it had never been an issue since I started, because the production started happening quickly. It was just one of those given things that happened in my business, but not coming from a business background of understanding how to run a business. I think that's the challenging part about, getting into that mentality and learning, okay, we have to start doing this differently. We have to start creating systems. We have to start creating, obviously, putting the right people and start delegating. I used to run my operation, without an assistant. It was just me and my wife, and then we got to the point we were doing close to 100 deals, and we're like, okay, we started now doing those hires, hiring that personal assistant or the TC, and starting to build now a true team that was going to allow me to expand myself and grow it to the next level, because I had applied the right, people in place to be able to take my business to the next level.
Okay, okay. So you started to think like a CEO rather than, you started to realize you have a business rather than you have this job. In terms of systems and processes, what were one of the first critical few that you put into place?
Hiring a personal assistant.
Okay.
Having a personal assistant /TC /admin /everything, because the first hire I did, she was basically handling everything for me. You know, my TC, personal assistant, et cetera, et cetera. She was my main gal running pretty much everything and assisting us with everything.
Okay, so your personal assistant, she was also a transaction coordinator. Okay, so that's a hire. That's like a structural thing that you put in place. Is there like an actual system? Well, talk to us about systems. Let's do it that way. What are some of the systems that you have in your company today that makes everything run like a machine?
Well, you know, I think, you know, systems it plays is, you know, I mentioned earlier, I have a listing coordinator, I have a personal assistant, I have a transaction coordinator, and I have a a marketing coordinator. So what the system is, you know, obviously my responsibility is to go out and produce and generate new business. And what happens is the minute either I get a listing or I get an escrow, obviously the file gets turned over to my staff. And then basically my production manager along, you know, with, you know, the production line itself, the system itself, it's going to take over, you know, the full responsibility of proceeding with the actual process of the escrow from, you know, ordering the home inspection, you know, the appraisal, et cetera, et cetera. So everything goes and that file gets assigned to, depending on what stage we're in that process, to the right person that is in my production line.
Okay, so I guess to shorten that up, at some point you just give it away. You give the file away, and you let. And here's the point that I'm trying to make is that, you know, you are, and I want to get into your 2 million GCI because you're running your company very lean. But you know, you have done. It sounds to me that you've done a great job with going. Okay, my time is worth $200 an hour, $400 an hour, whatever you have valued your time worth, and everything that you do, you go, okay, listen, you know, is messing with this file $800 an hour job? Nope. Okay, I'm going to give it away.
Correct.
Okay. How are you running? How are you kicking out such high GCI? I mean, you're running a very, very lean machine out there. What do you think that? Because look, I'll bring people on and they'll do 500 transactions at higher price points than you, but you know they will only maybe walk away with half of what you're making. You know, 1 million GCI, and then once they pay everybody, you know, they walk away with about 700. What is a trick to you running this super lean in the way that you have?
You know, I don't know if there's a trick to it or not. You know, I don't know that, you know, it's obviously there's not a trick. You know, I think I'm very productive with my time. You know, yes, you know, I believe that I have a good system in place. I know other top producers that are at a level of mine or close enough or higher than me. And I think at the end of the day, their revenue is lower than me because they actually rely on a lot more personnel. I don't know. I could probably share with you. I've got very productive people, good people that works for me. But at the same time, you know, I invest, you know, time, and I invest quality time into what we need to do. That at the end of the day, I feel that my cost of operation is definitely low, and I don't know what the key to it is. It's possibly saying I have good staff in place, and at the same time, I'm very hands-on. You know, I assist a lot on everything that I can, and having myself involved and my wife involved, I guess that makes our production line even more productive in the sense that, you know, we don't have our overhead really high, and at the end of the day, like you mentioned, is our true profit. It's still very good. It's
phenomenal. I mean, it's incredible because, you know, you're not doing you know, look, your 67 million is great, but normally people are not making 2 million GCI with that kind of volume. So you can have very productive people. But look, here's the deal. At the end of the day, one of two things need to happen. Either one, you are you know, when you get a lead, right, there's a cost. So you need to lower your cost per order or cost per acquisition. And to get your kind of results, you need to have an extremely high closing rate, right? So you can't, you know, if your cost per lead's $400, you know, you need to close 90% of those. Let's start here. Out of your 200 deals, hold on a second. Your 247 deals for 2014. What's the percentage buy sell there?
The percentage by what? I'm sorry.
Listing or buyer.
On the 247.
Yeah.
It's going to be like 65-35.
65 list, 35 buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And where out of the I can do the math on that, but out of that 65%, where are you getting? Where are those coming from?
I have a very diversified type of business, okay? I basically have business flowing, I'm going to say, from every angle possible that you can think of as far as, what your typical agent would do. My angles of business where they're funneling through, it's either my direct mailings, past clients, sign calls, postcards, billboards. I have billboards in town, so it could be from the billboard and those signage, direct mailers, postcards, we drive cars that are wrapped with our business. I have business coming from that, sphere of influence, and very strongly our database, our past clientele.
So are you, okay. In terms of your sphere or your past clients, right? Those are kind of lumped in the same. Are you, in addition to the mailers to these folks? I mean, do you have a process of touching them every X amount of days, or in terms of a phone call, or how are you mining your sphere and past clients?
Okay, past clients, they get touched at least 3 to 4 times a year for sure, depending obviously on the customers that don't give out any referrals. They get touched probably 3 to 4 times a year. The ones that do send out referrals, they get touched once a month.
And is this a phone call, or is this something you mail or email?
We do both. We do phone calls, and we also do mailers and for sure direct email. So we get emails out to them, and then I do hire someone that specifically just touches up with a phone call as well.
Okay. So that phone call doesn't necessarily come from you, but it does come from your team.
It comes from our team, correct?
Okay. That's interesting. What do you think for you, and with the stuff that you're doing right now? You have billboards, you have direct mail. What do you think is the one thing that's working best for you right now?
Everything. Okay. That's the true answer. Everybody tells me, "Hey, Ricardo, how's your billboard?" I have friends of the industry. They're trying to get billboards, and they're like, "Hey, Ricardo, how's your billboard working?" Or "How's that working?"
Yeah.
And basically, they tell me, "Hey, what's your return on your billboard?" Or, "Hey," I tell them, "Hey, listen, it's not going to work out the same way for you like it does for me, because if you obviously don't have much exposure in the industry, and all of a sudden you go out and put a billboard, which is going to cost you not that cheap, and you expect all this business to come from that billboard, it's not going to happen." For me, it's basically I've been on people's face for several years now through signs in our marketplace, through the baseball league where I have post and signage in the fields, from the cars that we drive, from the postcards and the mailer they received. Our image has been in the industry already pretty, steady and pretty actively for many years. So now you add a billboard or several billboards. Now you have funnel of business coming from multiple angles, and they may not call me from the billboard, but they've seen my billboard right off the freeway, and then they see me driving in town, and then all of a sudden they receive a postcard. They're going to be, "Man, I got to call this guy."
Yeah, he's everywhere.
This guy is all over the place.
Yeah. Well, and I think the billboards are kind of like I was telling you before. We do radio, and radio has this multiplier effect on everything else you do. And same thing with billboards. It's got it's an extra impression that you're making on those folks.
Absolutely.
Did you ever develop a niche for yourself?
For myself, or
the team, or whatever. I mean, a lot of people come on, they go, "Hey, you have to have a niche." I know you're kind of, in the Inland Empire a little bit. I mean, do you focus on equestrian property, or is there any kind of focus in terms of product that you have?
Well, our product is just your regular single-family residence.
Okay.
We don't really go out outside of that. It's mainly single-family residence. Inland Empire is obviously the area that we service, so that's our niche, the Inland Empire. But we do have, sources of business outside of the Inland Empire that comes from, whatever source that call came from, or the lead, or the referral that came from. But, yes, that's our area, that's our niche, and obviously we continue to service the listing along with the buyer. A lot of the times I know that could be something that that gets on someone. It's either you're going to focus just on buyers or you're just going to focus just on listings. We've been basically able to allow ourselves to work with both very strongly because we feel the importance of servicing both the seller and the buyer.
Right. Now, did you ever? So let's say that you have somebody sees your billboard, they get your mail, and like I got to call. I'm thinking about selling. I got to call Ricardo. They call Ricardo. They list with you. Do you? And let's assume that's in your farm area. Do you do open houses? Have you found that effective for you?
Yeah, we actually have done multiple open houses, and we continue to do open houses. For us, they've been very productive. Everybody has different mentality or different opinion about open houses. For me personally, we have been doing open houses since I started in this business, and we're still actively doing them, and they do have been a very productive source for us.
Okay. Yeah, and so just in terms of just tactics, you have a listing, you're going to have an open house. Is there any kind of a process that you go through to promote this open house?
You know what? When we have time and time allows us, we do send out obviously flyers notifying of our open house. But I think what has been more productive for us is we go out very out on our appearance, on our showing of the open house, in the sense that we installed a lot of open house signs. We try to make noise. We try to show presence by showing enough enthusiasm and enough signage. We go all out on our signage. We do a lot of signs, a lot of exposure, just to try to drive in as much as traffic as possible.
Yep. Do you Okay, so you don't, in terms of a system, so you don't necessarily have a checklist. Okay, we're going to do an open house. We're going to mail it. I'm going to have my assistant or my VA call.
No, because the volume is high. And a lot of times it's hard. You got so many. You got 3, 4 open houses or 2 open houses this weekend or 3, and they're just so constantly happening that it's really hard to catch up and do a specific system as far as doing this, doing that for every single listing, because it's really hard to keep up with the volume itself.
Got it. Okay. Now, earlier, I think you said that you decided that you needed to invest in yourself, and I think I could be wrong, but did you hire a coach? And at what point did you hire a coach?
To be honest with you, I can't remember exactly at what point, but I know I must have been probably 2.5, 3 years into the business, and I decided to, I didn't know much about it. I started going into a few seminars here and there, started learning about coaching and all that good stuff, and I got enrolled into a coaching program that was very, very beneficial and productive for me.
So again, a guy like you, Ricardo, that is, you obviously are a smart guy, to be able to build what you've built. And you're a guy with a lot of hustle. What does coaching do for a guy like you?
Coaching does, I've always been very driven. Do I need someone to help me, obviously, with motivation and driven? Probably not. I think what coaching did for me, it just helped me understand on how can I be more productive with my time. Leveraging myself, breaking down my day, creating a plan, putting an agenda together, just being more productive and creating systems to be more productive. The hustle was always there and it's still there. The hard work was always there. The enthusiasm, the dedication was there. I think it was just more of understanding on how to create systems, just mainly how to be more productive with your day and your time.
All right, so let's talk about that. How breaking down your day, creating a plan. What does a typical day look like for you, Ricardo?
Well, for me, it's basically lead generation, lead follow up, setting up appointments. It just depends on where you're at in your business career. It's going to determine how's your day broken into. Your typical new agent's day, it's going to be different than my day because they're basically at a different level that I am. My business, obviously, it's at a level where I have to have a game plan and I have to have a schedule broken down based on my standings correct right now in my business. But my business, I got to come in on a daily basis and I got to set up appointments. For me, I already have the leads that I have to follow up with. I've got the cold, I've got the warm, and I've got the hot. So I focus on the hot because I've got enough where I just focus on setting up appointments and closing appointments with either a listing or a buyer writing an offer on a property.
So knocking them down. Okay, so I mean, look, if I go back to your guys', you and your wife's beginning, first 6 months, 30 deals, that is astounding. That's incredible. If somebody wanted to do that, and they wanted to, what would you say if they said, "Hey, Ricardo, look, man, give me some advice. Should I pick a farm and go door knocking, or should I pick a farm and just hop on the phone and fundamentally do the same thing, but do it over the phone?" What would you tell them to do?
It just depends on what works best for them. For me, it was the door knocking. I personally feel, personally contacting someone, and this is me, okay? Someone else may have a different opinion, but for me personally, as personal contact for me is more productive than getting on the phone. Yes, this business, it's a numbers game, and if you can get on the phone and you touch 100 people,
yep.
You have a better chance of a better turnout than going out and door knocking and touching 40, 50 people. But for me, it was more productive going out and meeting personally people. For some of the crowd listening, they may not, that might not be the most productive thing for them. They have to really probably figure it out what best works for them, but either one of the two. But you have to focus on either doing one of the two and that you're consistent about it. And I think that's the biggest challenge that people has in this industry, because I try to teach new agents coming in. I'm trying to put them into a system, into obviously doing this on a day-to-day basis. And where I see the biggest challenges coming from them is they're non-consistent on whether it's the door knocking or whether it's the phone calling. Is they're non-consistent because they're trying to expect to get a response and a result right away, and it doesn't work that way. It has to be a consistency of doing it every single day, or the days that you have it in your schedule and your agenda, and you have to stick to it. Agents tend to, jump around from one thing to another because it's not working out,
right.
But they haven't given themselves enough time for it to start working out.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Let's say that so I agree with you, right? So for I think people will have to figure it out, like what are they good at and what do they enjoy and what can they stick with, right? Whether that's door knocking or calling or whatever. But I agree with what you said. You said you have to do one or the other. I think it's a mistake, and tell me your take. I see too many newer agents, and they go, "Oh, look, social media is everything. I'm going to, that's where I'm going to spend my time because I like it. I'm going to spend time on Facebook and I'm going to get deals from there." What would you say to that person who wants to start, but they don't want to start with either one of the things you just recommended, which is call or door knock? I'm not too big on social media, okay, and I think that's one of the avenues that I'm trying to get myself more educated and more involved. But I truly believe that if it's not broken, why try to fix it, right? My business has been working the way it's been working. I'm not big in social media. I have not focused or dedicated myself too much into social media because I'm not, the technical type of guy. I run a very simple but effective business. Now, do I personally believe on social media and all of that? Not necessarily, because it hasn't been my business model. It hasn't been, the avenue that has personally helped me out. Do I think it works? Yes, it does. But for someone that is starting, I don't think that's the avenue that you should focus on. I think once you're getting yourself going, yes, it's definitely good and a good avenue, I believe. However, if you want to focus yourself just in social media and all of that good stuff, and you anticipate to start doing, 10, 12 deals a year, do I personally feel it's going to happen out of that? I personally don't. Yep.
Can it be an avenue for additional exposure? Yes. But you have to go back to what I believe we always hear is it's the fundamentals of real estate, is the meeting, the contacts, meeting people, obviously exposing yourself as a service provider anywhere and everywhere you go so people knows this is what I do for a living. I
Yep.
go to school, the parents know me that I sell real estate. I go to the baseball fields with my kids, the parents know me that I sell real estate. I go to church, the people knows me at church for real estate as well. I go to the gas station, I'm wearing my name badge, or I'm driving my vehicle. Everywhere I go, business goes with me, and I've gone to that point where my business is so blessed that business approaches me now. I don't go out and look for business. Yes, I do in a sense, but I don't have to go out and look for business. I've gotten to a point where business comes to me, because of exposure itself. I've exposed myself enough where, people knows that I am an agent. I am very active. I am successful in the marketplace. They come for me. They come to me for the service.
Yeah, no, and look, I'm taking up a ton of your time, so I appreciate it. But would you? And so we're going to start wrapping up. But let me ask you this: there's, you can go ahead and mail people. You can do all the stuff that you should do: mail, call, whatever, and door knock. I think when you get to a point, and I want to get your take on this, when you get to a point where like radio, for example, I'm going to tie this into your billboards, but radio, when you start doing radio, like all of a sudden, like you're legit in everybody's mind, right? Hey, look, Ricardo's doing radio. This guy is credible. He's real. He's an expert, right? He's successful. Did you, when you did your billboards, right? I have to imagine all of a sudden people go, that Ricardo's real, right? He has credibility in the market. Did doing that like very credible move of getting a billboard, did you see like, again, a bump in credibility or is that when people started to more approach you?
I feel yes, and I did notice it. That's why I went from 1-2 billboards that I started to multiple billboards. And yes, I did saw the difference on, you mentioned credibility, and exposing myself even to the higher level, because if we had a consumer on the fence trying to determine should I call this company or should I call the Acevedo team, then that might have pushed them to say, okay, I'm getting off the fence. I'm calling this guy.
Yeah.
He's got a few billboards. If he can afford billboards, I mean, he's got a legitimate business.
Right. Right. I totally agree. And I think the other thing that it speaks to is that, hey, Ricardo's going to treat me right because this guy's here to stay, right? He's not some fly-by-night guy that's selling real estate part-time. This guy's real. So, okay, listen, Ricardo, I always ask my guests for a book recommendation. And I didn't tee you up for this. I probably need to be better about that. But here's the setup, and hopefully you read. I'm an aspiring agent. I have $25. What book should I go buy today?
What book? You know what? I'm not a good book reader, and a lot of people says, "Really, Ricardo, you don't read that much?" I said, "No, I'm a lazy reader. I don't like reading." But the book I've read multiple times is, I believe, it's $1 Million Real Estate Agent. From Keller, the guy from Keller Williams, I believe.
Gary Keller.
Yeah, Gary Keller. So I've read that book multiple times, and I believe that book, gave me a lot of understanding on putting systems together, which I already was part of the training and coaching I took before that. But just that kind of just also reiterated the importance of even if you don't have a team, if you're still just a person that is running just a solo business itself, you're not an actual team, you're still going to need a team eventually for whatever production, you want to get yourself into whatever level you want. So that book was very, productive for me.
Yep, and I think and look, that's a common one on this show, and that's okay. But I think with people going back to 33 touches, right? It's just some very tactical stuff. And look, everybody out there in the audience, if you haven't read Gary's Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, that's something you have to read. And look, you can get a free copy on us. Just go to audibletrial.com/superagentslive and get a free copy. Now, look, here's the, I'm assuming that you're not done yet, right? You want to grow, and I'm sure that you're going to be doing 500 deals sooner or later. The question is, how long is it going to take you to get there? So I always ask my audience if they've gotten anything out of this, and you've delivered a lot of nuggets as far as I'm concerned, that they reach out to you and say thank you. And look, maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm in Rancho Cucamonga. I want to join Ricardo's team. Where can people find you, Richard?
They can find me very easily. I tell clients, say, if you lose my phone number, just, pull my phone number up from, obviously the billboard right off the 10 freeway. We're obviously in the Inland Empire. You can reach me at Ricardo@theacevedoteam.com via email. very accessible. You know, there's a ton of signage out there that people has exposure to my information. So I'm in Rancho Cucamonga, and I'd love to, you know, take a call from someone that just wants to pick on my brain, or even someone that potentially wants to come out and interview, to probably come in and join our company in our office.
That's awesome. And look, everybody, if you're driving your car, riding your bike, walking your dog, all this stuff will be on the show notes at superagentslive.com, and we'll spell Acevedo. He's saying it really fast, but it'll all be there.
Ricardo at theacevedoteam.com.
Perfect.
Or just what our website, theacevedoteam.com.
Perfect, man. And look, I'll be the first guy to kick off the thank you train. Thanks, bud. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me over. It was a pleasure.
All right, let's keep in touch.
Thank you.
See you, bud. This show is produced by me, Toby Salgado, with help from our research team and production done by Viralcast. If you're building a team and want to make sure you're doing it the most efficient way, reach out to Corcoran Coaching. They coach 83 of the nation's top producing teams, and for our listeners, they'll give you a free business evaluation. Send an email to Bubba at CorcoranCoaching.com and let them know I told you guys to call.
Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, yo. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15%